everybody, once again. This is Jeff Adams from the Icebox Radio Theater, bringing you another edition of Freezer Treats. This is the feature where we unearth or thaw out something wonderful from the archives of the Icebox Radio Theater, giving those of you who maybe haven't heard of us until recently a little sample of something from the past, along with a link as to where you can go and find the show in question and listen to the whole thing. And today we're going to go with a relatively recent episode. It is from the Scoop Sisters Mysteries podcast and is entitled Rum Runner Sue, the Lady and the Lug. Now, there was a couple of interesting forces that went to work in bringing Rum Runner Sue to life. It's a very different sort of a show in that it is a mystery series, but it's a historical mystery series. Rainy Lake and the Rainy River, this region of the United States, was a haven for bootleggers during Prohibition because Rainy Lake has a lot of islands, and it's very easy to get lost out there. Also, during the winter months, it is possible to basically drive across most of the lake, depending on the route you take. And the gist of it is it was really easy for people moving illegal hooch from Canada to the United States to do that. And that period in history had always fascinated me. And combine that with the fact that I had several ladies involved in the theater, including my wife, Diane, who, as we did old-time radio recreations, discovered there just weren't that many mystery plays or mystery series in old-time radio that starred female sleuths, Candy Matson being one exception. But Candy Matson actually only has just a handful of episodes. And so that facilitated us creating our very own female sleuth from an old-time radio perspective, and that is, of course, Rum Runner Sue, starring Billy Joe Cones. Let's hear a sample from the very first episode of this series right now.
Big Ben took off, leaving me to my thoughts. I didn't know that was the last time I'd see him alive. He was a good egg, Ben was. Most bootleggers on Rainy Lake were, on account of the work being relatively safe. The lake was a big piece of water with hundreds of islands and little coves, and a shoreline that snaked through wilderness few people have ever tread. In other words, there was no shortage of places to hide. Most of the time, moving a case or two of Canadian whiskey was simply a matter of picking a spot, hauling the stuff by boat or truck when the ice is thick enough, hiding it on shore under some pine boughs, then steaming away. The customer would come up later, load the hooch onto a truck, and haul it off to the nightclubs and fancy parties of St. Paul or Chicago or New York. And as for John Law, the Volstead Act, in its infinite stupidity, did not provide much by the way of help for local law enforcement. And our own gendarme, one Sheriff John Beauregard, Beau to his friends, which I'm proud to say I'm one, does what he can, within reason. Don't tell him I told you so, but in private, Beau hates the Volstead Act and finds the concept of legislating morality un-American. Complicated being a peace officer these days. As for my part, I was simply a go-between, a safe house where a shipment could be hidden when the heat was on. I suppose that makes me an outlaw, but I have my reasons. Reasons I'll go into at another time. This story is about Big Ben. Things started to go south that night when the shipment and Ben failed to arrive. I waited until 3 a.m., then hit the hay. It wasn't until the next morning when things went truly sour. I was in the back tending to my tomatoes when I heard something crashing toward me through the woods.
Sue!
Out of the tree line staggered a girl in a dressing robe. Her arms were scratched and bleeding, her feet barely covered by what was left of a pair of bedroom slippers, and her eyes showed the telltale signs of panic. I recognized her as Mary Wills, one of the girls that worked for Madame Rose at a joy house just up the shore. She practically fell at my feet.
Sue!
Who did this to you, Mary? If one of those loggers touched you, I'll slit his throat, by God!
No, I did this running through the woods. I didn't have time to dress. You gotta hide me.
What's after you, Mary?
The mayor.
What?
It's true. He came to the house. I heard him talking to Rose. They were going to arrest me, Sue. They were going to arrest me for murder.
I took the little girl up to my apartment above the kitchen and worked on binding her cuts. She sat still, mostly.
Ow.
Hold still.
It stings.
Well, then run up the road next time. Those branches did a number on your arms.
Oh, no. They gonna be permanent scars? I can't get no scars, Sue. I can't turn into one of those girls begging for Johns on account of her looks.
Now just calm down. I'll make sure you come out of this okay.
Thank you. You always been so nice.
So what sent you into the woods to begin with? I mean, the mayor's a blowhard, but he's not that scary.
Today he was. You should have heard him. He even had Rose scared, he was so wound up.
And it's murder, you said?
Yeah.
Well, that's just ridiculous. You wouldn't hurt a fly, Mary.
That's sweet. Thank you.
Who's the stiff in question anyway? Oh, honey, don't cry.
I can't help it. It's Ben.
What?
Mayor says my Ben's been shot, and they think I done it.
Okay, so there's a little sample of Rum Runner Sue, the Lady and the Lug. The very first episode of Rum Runner Sue dates back of just a few months now, less than a year ago that we premiered this show. Billy Joe Cones was a simple delight to work with. It's kind of interesting working with remote actors, and in this case, we actually had to work with two. Billy Joe, as I mentioned in the intro, is relocated from the upper Midwest to Atlanta, and Trelawney, even though that she lives in the area, or lived in the area at that time in Fort Francis, Ontario, right across the border from International Falls, she actually could not come across the border due to COVID. So she also worked in a home studio, and it worked out pretty good. Everyone recorded their own lines in their own place while we spoke to each other over Zoom. And then they sent me the recordings, and I put them all together. And I think this episode and also its follow-up episode are really worth listening to. Rum Runner Sue is currently on the Scoop Sisters Mysteries podcast. There's a link to that below, as well as a link to this particular episode, The Lady and the Lug. I invite you to check things out. I'll be back next Monday with another treat from the freezer of the Icebox Radio Theater.